The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Hello, YouTube. We need to fight a lot harder than what's going on right now. We need to fight fast and hard. Attack and attack. That's what they're doing to us. We need to keep doing it, folks. Everybody you know, send us stuff to. Thank you, Aaron Hawkins. You did a fabulous job, man. Fabulous job. God bless everybody else, and thanks to everybody that's passing the stuff around. Good night.
But before that, Iran has threatened to block oil shipments through one of the world's busiest waterways if the West applies fresh sanctions against it. State television reported the announcement by the country's vice president as its navy held war games near the crucial Straits of Hormuz. Now, we're joined by Dr. Syed Mohammed Randi from the University of Tehran to talk about the implications of what's been said here. Doctor, good to see you. Thanks for being with us. Now, if Iran does make good its threat, the implications would be huge, wouldn't they? How much damage could it do, considering how much oil Saudi Arabia exports to the United States, for example?
Well, I think any act of hostility against Iran, and that's basically what an oil embargo would be, would force Iran to take retaliatory measures, and that would indeed create a very difficult situation globally, because that would mean the halt of oil exports from the Middle East, and that would have a devastating effect on the global economy. The Iranians, of course, hope that the Americans don't act foolishly, but the Americans do seem to be behaving in a very irrational manner and dragging the region towards a very dangerous situation.
Well, there are American warships right now in the Persian Gulf. I mean, this isn't the first time that Iran's issued this kind of threat. Did so back in 2008. The US said a blockade like that would be considered an act of war then. I just mentioned that American warships are right there in the Persian Gulf now. Does this bring the West's tense relations with Iran closer to military conflict?
Well, it basically depends on the West and countries like Saudi Arabia. If they wish to try to prevent Iranians from living like ordinary people in other countries, if they want to make Iranians suffer, then they too will have to face the consequences. The Iranians are quite capable of closing the Strait of Hormuz, and I think that the Americans know that quite well. Iran's defense capabilities are very different from what they were 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I think that Israel's defeat in Lebanon, as well as the recent capture of the highly sophisticated American drone by the Iranians, shows the limits of American capabilities. So the best way forward really would be for the United States to cease, to quit threatening Iran and trying to punish ordinary Iranians, and try to behave more reasonably and in a more respectable manner, and the situation in the region, tensions in the region would decrease.
Doctor, as an aside to this, President Ahmadinejad has also said that Iran, he thinks, is going to become a major exporter of refined fuels by 2013, despite any further sanctions that might be imposed on his country. Why is he so confident? How can he be so confident?
Well, Iran is putting an extraordinarily lot of money into the oil sector, and if you recall, just a couple of years ago, when the United States and its allies were thinking of imposing sanctions and preventing Iran from receiving gasoline, the Iranians decided to build their own refineries or increase their own production for gasoline. Now you see that Iran in the very near future is going to become an exporter of gasoline. So the potential in Iran is there, the wealth is there, the oil is there, and the incentive is there. Basically what the Americans have done is that they forced the Iranians to think locally and try to solve their own problems without relying on foreign partners. But the most important thing really is that for the Iranians, the American behavior is creating a dangerous situation not for Iran, but for the whole globe. Iran can deal with the United States. Iran is strong enough to stand up against the United States, but the United States is basically pushing things in a direction in which everyone is going to pay a heavy price unless they're forced to change direction.
Dr. Saad Mohammed Marandi from the University of Tehran, but joining us tonight from Beirut. Thank you very much.
The highly influential Council on Foreign Relations, also known as CFR, declared this month in their online publication Foreign Affairs that it is now time to attack Iran. To those who are unaware of the degree which the Council on Foreign Relations is able to dictate foreign policy, the following clip should be informative.
Thank you very much, Richard, and I am delighted to be here in these new headquarters. I have been often to, I guess, the mothership in New York City. But it's good to have an outpost of the council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the council, so this will mean I won't have as far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
To those who are already familiar with the CFR and their influence on all levels of the federal government, it should come as no surprise that U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey indicated this week that the U.S. has every intention of following that advice. In an interview with U.S. media in Afghanistan, General Dempsey stated that he had been quietly leading behind-the-scenes preparations for an attack against Tehran. My biggest worry is that it may miscalculate our resolve. Any miscalculation could mean that we are drawn into conflict, and that would be a tragedy for the region and the world, he said. In the context of these statements, the recent withdrawal from Iraq looks very much like strategic repositioning to free up resources for this upcoming war. Many analysts fear that such an attack would draw in China and Russia, who have extensive diplomatic and economic relationships with Iran. U.S. officials are clearly undeterred by such a possibility. So how can the public prevent the U.S. government from drawing the entire world into mutually assured destruction? Well, politically, whether you like it or not, your last hope is Ron Paul. Ron Paul is the only honest candidate in the race and is the only genuine anti-war candidate we have. Now, make no mistake, he's not going to be able to prevent the economic collapse. That's coming one way or another. He can't fix the political system. However, he may be able to steer us away from World War III during his time in office. For that reason alone, whether you like his other opinions or not, whether you consider yourself a liberal or conservative or none of the above, if you intend to vote this year, it is morally imperative that you vote for Ron Paul. However, as I've stated many times before, it's not wise to put all of your hope in one candidate or in a political solution in general. The American people need to take personal responsibility and organize strategic, nonviolent resistance to shut the federal government down. The recent passing of NDAA, which allows for indefinite imprisonment of U.S. citizens without trial, and the current push with the upcoming SOPA and PIPA laws to give the government the ability to shut down the internet at will, should give you a hint as to what is in store down the road if you allow them to move forward unimpeded. What you need to understand is the people who are running the show fully intend to take us into World War III. They are perfectly willing to sacrifice you, your children, and the entire planet for their political goals. That should be more than enough to motivate you to take action.
These last few clips was just a reminder of everything that's going on, folks. There's more than one thing. The ones that are at the very front, that's a major deal for all Americans. So y'all need to get together, stand up, and let's fight this. Get the message out. Work hard to get the message out. Every friend you got, pass the message. Put the fear of God in their ass where it belongs, because they are not on your side. Not one little iota. God bless.